So let's now dig deeper into some of those stories and others making the headlines in the media. So we begin with the front page of the Times and looking at the UK Prime Minister, who it says is in last-minute talks to save his plan after being warned by European leaders the deal would not be approved at next week's Crunch summit unless the EU's objections are resolved. In the Independent business pages, it talks about UK businesses who've been stockpiling in case of a no deal will not see a Brexit dividend or see a boost to the economy if an agreement is not reached by the 31st of October. Now let's look at that story that Rico is discussing. The front page of the Financial Times is looking at HSBC on a mission to drive down its costs significantly with 10,000 jobs on the line, it would seem. This is the plan of the new interim chief executive, Noel Quinn, who makes his mark on the bank. The FT has yet to comment on that. Arab News says Iraq is spiralling into chaos after 8 more people were killed, 25 injured on a 6th day of protests against corruption, unemployment and failed public services. And then The Guardian Online looks at Saudi Arabia's lifted some restrictions on women travelling in the ultra-conservative Muslim kingdom. According to the Tourism Authority, the new guidelines will allow women to rent hotel rooms without a male guardian's presence, and foreign men and women will be able to share a room without proof of marriage. Cornelia is back, as promised. Cornelia Meyer, CEO of MRL Corporation. So, Cornelia, we talked about the week ahead for the UK Prime Minister earlier in the programme. And what I find interesting is the front page of the Times talks in a lot of detail about EU leaders, in particular the Finnish Prime Minister, who is saying what's wrong with the UK deal. And yet, if you read other papers, The Telegraph, if you read BBC Online, it's not as negative. It really depends what you read as to who's saying what about how this might go this week.
It totally depends on what you read, and it's very interesting because the UK is very good at having this conversation amongst ourselves, right, on Brexit. And, you know, we really need to talk to the other lot, the guys in Brussels. But when you look at it, what bewilders me is clearly the deal as it stands is not acceptable to the EU. The Latvian Prime Minister came out on the Andrew Marr show, this BBC's Andrew Marr show on Sunday, saying what we are worried about, that with Boris Johnson's deal there may be a way for goods that are not compliant with EU regulations to bleed into the rest of the EU via Northern Ireland. And that is, you know, that piercing of the veil is a big concern for them. So we're not there yet. The Irish Taoiseach has been very vehement in rejecting it, and the EU leaders have said, we stand behind him.
It's quite interesting, though, because 10 Downing Street says that actually they've been getting very positive feedback from Leo Varadkar, the Prime Minister of Ireland. So again, we're getting very mixed messages. It depends where you read and the quotes.
But when you look at what Leo Varadkar said, he said this is a total no-go.
Interestingly, Boris Johnson's been on the phone to various leaders, and he's going to be on the phone most of today and tomorrow, etc. Emmanuel Macron, though, is saying instead of ringing all the EU leaders, you really need to talk to Michel Barnier. That's the man that you need to be on the phone to.
He's right, and you know, there needs to really be detailed negotiations, and they're running out of time. And what Johnson told Macron was, don't just think that we will extend. We may not extend, and I don't quite see how he can do that, because he has just told a court in Scotland that he would comply with the Ben Act, and that means he has to extend.
And that point is underlined here in this article in the Times, that number 10 said Mr Johnson told Mr Macron the EU should not be lured into the mistaken belief the UK will stay in the EU after October the 31st.
He would be running
driving that message.
He would be running foul of the Ben Act. And Geoffrey Cox, who is very supportive of Johnson, said, you know, if you don't comply with the Ben Act, I'm out.
That's the Attorney General.
Yes.
All right. Let's move on then to this article by James Moore, who's the chief business commentator at The Independent. And it is kind of almost like a feature piece, isn't it? Which is looking at the impact that stockpiling has had on the UK economy, and when you get the growth figures for various quarters, you can see the activity of companies as they've prepared to leave, which they had to do at the end of March this year, and they're getting ready again at the end of October.
And you know, they had to do that. So at the first quarter was quite good because they had to do the stockpiling, they had to do the economic activity. And then the second quarter was negative because they were unwinding.
They were just getting rid of inventory.
Inventories, yes, they were unwinding some. They had stockpiled 10 billion, they were unwinding 3 billion. They're now stockpiling, they think, about another 4 billion. So we'll have 11 billion pounds of stockpile. So even if we have deal or no deal, if you have no deal, it will be bad for the economy. But even if we have a deal, you won't see that deal dividend because companies will be getting rid of inventories, as you said.
So that's basically what this article argues, isn't it? That the so-called deal dividend, that's something the former Chancellor Philip Hammond often talked about, may not necessarily happen.
It may not happen, but you know, we're here talking manufacturing. Then let's not forget there's services. That the big chunk of the UK economy is not manufacturing anymore, it's services. So there we may see some deal dividend, we may see some more interest in real estate. So other sectors other than manufacturing may well get a deal dividend.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to the Financial Times and something that Rico's already unpacked for us in Business Briefing. HSBC to axe up to 10,000 jobs in a worldwide cost-cutting drive.
And that comes on the back of 4,700 jobs that they have already axed or said they would axe. So we're about 15,000 jobs. It comes on the back of Deutsche Bank saying we're axing 18,000 jobs. It's, you know, this low interest rate, and in some countries, negative interest rate policy just doesn't, and the slagging economy due to trade wars makes investment banking less profitable, and it's very hard for banks to be profitable. And what do you do when you're not profitable?
You sack banks. Those issues, but it's also about the disruptors within fintech.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
There are so many within the financial services sector.
I'm actually on the advisory board of the Middle East North Africa Fintech Association. So it's that, and it's also AI. Let's not forget, this article doesn't say it, but let's not forget that a lot of the jobs can now be done by artificial intelligence. A lot of the lawyers' jobs can be done by artificial intelligence.
So this is expected to be announced.
This is the
Quinn
future.
Is the new interim chief executive, so he's expected to announce this. And the article points out that actually a lot of the jobs could go in Europe because it's making much of its money now in Asia at the moment.
80% of its money it's making in Asia. So and it's 238,000 people across the bank.
But
that's a lot of people.
Reiterate again that HSBC, and we've been in touch with them, have yet to confirm or give us more detail on that story. Now, Arab News, it's got a feature on the front page, and no surprise at all, 6 days of violence in Iraq. It says more die as Iraq spirals into chaos. Give us your take on what's happening there.
My heart goes out. I mean, that poor country has been through so much, ever since the two Iraq wars. And, the people are rioting because they say, well, there's too much corruption in the system. And when you look at it, basic services aren't there. Water supply is a problem if you live in Basra, for instance. So you sometimes have oil shortages in a country that produces oil, petrol shortages. So people are angry, and it's getting very violent and very out of hand.
I mean, Arab News talks about how the Prime Minister has announced a series of reforms, but actually this article says it's just not going to be enough to quell the anger and the frustration.
It's not going to be enough, because if he builds 100,000 low-cost housing, that's fine. There are many more poor people. If he has some land reform, that's fine. But you still need the water to come to you. I mean, basic services have a problem. And the other thing is, don't think the fight against Daesh, the fight against ISIS, is over yet in Iraq. Because this is still a country in the middle of a smallish civil war.
Guardian looks at Saudi Arabia. It says Saudi Arabia to allow unmarried foreign couples in hotel rooms together without having to prove that they're married. Lots of other measures as well to really make Riyadh and other places attractive as a place to go. They want the tourism industry, don't they?
They wanted to. It's part of the Crown Princess Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030, where he wants to wean the country off petroleum, of the dependence on oil, and he wants other industries. He wants industry, and tourism is great because tourism creates jobs, and he has a lot of young people.
You travel there a lot. I mean, is it somewhere that you think would be attractive to foreign tourists?
It's a fantastically beautiful country. When you look,
you don't work for the tourism board in Saudi Arabia, do you?
No, they should hire me. They should hire me.
Just checking.
No, it's stunningly. It has stunningly beautiful parts. So it's stunning, and people are so nice. So, as you know, I'm a total fan.
You are a huge fan, but of course, with events of recent times like Jamal Khashoggi and other things, it does put people off.
Yeah,
we are running out of time, I'm afraid. Sorry, Cornelia.
But it's an interesting country.
I'm going to have to leave it there. Cornelia Meyer, so good to have your company as well on The Briefing. Have a lovely day.